Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if it's your very first time here, welcome on in. I am back finally with another monthly plan with me, the first of 2025, and boy, we are only 2 weeks into the new year and I feel like I've lived an entire year already, an entire lifetime, it seems. Thank you so much for your patience on this upload. I'm pretty sure this is the longest I've gone without uploading a monthly plan with me, and I'm so sorry about that. But if you saw my community post, and I'm sure if you've seen on the news literally everywhere for the past week and a half, Los Angeles has been dealing with some devastating wildfires, and we have been relatively close to the largest one, which is the Palisades fire. So last week, for about 3 or 4 days, we were on high alert. We had our bags packed. I mean, we still have bags packed, to be fair, but the way the wind is going, the way the fire is heading, we are safe as of right now. But for a few days last week, we were just, the only thing that was on our minds was the fire. We were watching the news on social media 24/7, which definitely did a number on our mental health, besides the fire itself. But I just really wasn't in the mental headspace to literally do anything. Anytime I would try to journal or just get work done, I was just all over the place mentally, and I was like, you know what, maybe I just need to be in the moment just in case anything were to happen, just in case we needed to evacuate. Thankfully, as of right now, we haven't needed to evacuate. Our area is currently in a safe zone. The winds aren't that bad here, and the fire has been pushing more north of us. So that has, helped a little bit with things, but regardless, this fire is still going, so it feels like we can't fully relax, hence why we still have our bags packed and everything. But at least for the time being, our days feel a little bit more on the normal side, however you want to define normal as right now. And we've definitely made it a point to separate ourselves from social media because it was just creating this bubble of us just constantly seeing images and watching videos and hearing the same things, and it's, this is still going on. So it's like, okay, for our sanity, we just need to be informed about the most important things, but just try to mentally separate ourselves because it was just creating this unneeded anxiety when there was already enough anxiety going around. But we are here, we are safe, our loved ones are safe, everything is okay for the moment, and I feel like I'm personally in a better mental health space to sit down and record this voiceover and finally show you guys my January plan with me. To be completely honest though, I am very behind on my trackers for this month, so that is something that is a goal of mine. I've been slowly taking baby steps to integrate some sort of normalcy into my daily life. And keeping up with my trackers is something that I need to do. But for the meantime, if it isn't already obvious, I decided to do a pirate theme for January. The last time I did a pirate theme was actually my 2020 bullet journal, which was also a black page journal, but 2020 was not a good year in journaling for me, so I literally only did like the cover page and then the habit and mood trackers, but I didn't fill them in at all. So I knew that at some point I was going to redeem myself and do this theme again, and here we are. I love pirates, I love everything about them, and it just felt so fitting to recreate this in another black page bullet journal. This cover page took me a very long time, but I had a vision for it. I knew that I wanted to draw a gigantic pirate ship that kind of takes up the entire spread, and then use a different kind of like textured paper for the sails to give them more of like a fabric-y look. So I went in with some vellum paper to just trace out the outline of the sails, and then I matched those shapes to this textured paper that I had. I was originally looking for a specific paper, which you'll see for my habit tracker, but I couldn't find it. This plan with me took a few days to do, so I think it was like the next day I actually found the paper that I wanted to use, but I was not going to go back and redo the sails, I think you can kind of get the idea. But nonetheless, I really love how it turned out. However, and you will see as we slowly progress through this cover page, I did not like how the bottom of the ship was looking. I initially thought it was cool to have the little portholes at the bottom of the ship, or cannon holes, whatever they're supposed to be. I'm not an expert in pirate ship anatomy, okay? I saw a reference on Pinterest and then I just freehanded that. But I wasn't really liking how they were looking, so what I decided to do was use a thicker washi tape and kind of make it look like the ship was sitting in the ocean being the washi tape itself. And I'm really glad I made that change, because how I drew the pirate ship, I think I drew it a little bit too high up. Like, I should have brought it down a lot more so you could not only see the skull and crossbones like flag that I imagined it to have, but so the bottom half of the ship, or in my opinion, the more like obscure, complicated part, would be covered. And then I could still do some kind of ocean-esque washi tape design at the bottom. But we just improvised and we covered up what I didn't like, and it looks great. Something else that I ended up changing about the ship as I progressed through the design was making some of the lines a little bit thicker. You'll see once I go in and start adding more of the ephemera elements that the ship itself, or at least some of the details, gets a little bit lost. And I think it's because when I was drawing this ship, I used a smaller Sakura Jelly Roll size instead of the 0.8 size, which is like my normal drawing pen size. So I went in and just thickened up those lines a little bit. I also used my Posca paint pen for some of the accents as well. All in all, just to make the ship pop a little bit more once I go in and add all the extra details. After tracing all of the sails, I cut them out and then pasted them onto their respective areas, which was kind of fun. I felt like I was putting a little puzzle together, and I'm really glad that I did this. I also went in with my distressed ink just to make the sails look a little bit more worn, especially because, like I said, the paper that I originally wanted to use for the sails had that distressed look. So it was basically just my attempt at trying to mimic that paper. Like I mentioned earlier, I went in with my larger Posca paint pen just to fill in those windows, as well as the portholes at the bottom of the ship, which will eventually get covered anyways. I think this was just, you can kind of see my thought process of slowly coming to the realization that I wasn't liking how the bottom part was looking, and I thought that by filling in the holes with the Posca that it would look better and add a little bit more contrast, but that didn't end up happening. So now I'm going in with that text washi tape and kind of giving it somewhat of a rougher edge to mimic the look of waves. And I didn't realize it until a little bit later, but this is the same kind of detail that I gave the cover page to my 2025 bullet journal, which if you haven't seen, I will make sure to link. I did like a coffee shop theme for my yearly setup pages. And for the cover of that, I did like a faux coffee shop exterior, and I did this same kind of large washi tape detail at the bottom. This is why it's such a staple for me to have wider washi tapes in my collection for instances like this where I either need to cover something up, or just instead of going in with book paper or book pages, I could just use a bunch of strips of washi tape, which I've done plenty of times in the past. So I think it was just a coincidence that I ended up doing the exact same thing, because I just really wanted to cover up the bottom of that ship. Here I am going in with the distressed ink on the washi tape, and then I will eventually add it to the sails as well. This distressed ink set is a holy grail stationery product of mine. I do still plan to do a 2024 favorites for stationery video, and this will 1000% be included. Anytime I find an excuse to distress anything in my journals, I will take the time to do that. In usual monthly setup fashion, I had to find a place to put January somewhere. that didn't mean covering up my favorite parts of the ship, so we're putting it on this side because I did not like the square detail that I drew earlier, so this was just the perfect place to have the title for the month. In order to continue the pirate vibes, of course, I decided to draw a ribbon banner for the title, and I continued doing this throughout this entire setup to kind of mimic the look of like a pirate map or a scroll or something that you might find on a ship. And I remember drawing these so much like when I was in school for like my headers and stuff like that, and I had to retrain myself on how to draw them because I hadn't for so long, and I knew there was like a specific technique to make it easier. So I spent like 5-10 minutes just trying to figure out how to redraw them again, and I think this is just a nice little extra detail and really ties the whole spread together. Next, because I felt like the background was a little bit too empty, but I didn't want to go in and add any more stickers or washi tape, I decided to draw some stars and constellations, and it gave it like a very dreamy fantasy vibe, which I loved. I love the idea that this ship was traveling the seas at night, and I actually received a comment on my Instagram when I posted this, and someone had said that this was a really cool theme for the start of a new year because it's almost like the ship it has the wind in its sails and it's trying to navigate into a brand new year, and the stars are kind of guiding it throughout, you know, its time on the open seas. And I just thought that was such a beautiful metaphor, and I didn't even think about that. I guess you can say the ocean has been very rocky since the start of our voyage, but hopefully there are clearer skies ahead. Next, I'm just going in again and adding even more detail to the ship because I just don't know when to stop. But I added these little dashes to try to mimic the look of wood, just to give the bottom half of the ship a little bit more detail. And then I went in with my Holy Grail gold metallic pen from Uniball, just to add in a little bit extra pops of color and shine here and there. And that is this cover page all set and done. This took way longer than it should have, but I love how it turned out. Also, another piece of inspiration that I forgot to mention is that I am a huge fan of Sea of Thieves. It's a pirate game. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and the ship being framed by all these stars, like, it just reminded me of the game and how beautiful it is, especially when you sail at night, because you see all of these stars and the different aurora borealis colors, and it's just it's such a beautiful game. If you are a fan of pirates, please play Sea of Thieves. It is so much fun. I'm not really much of a combat heavy person, so when they introduced like the private PvE servers, I was so happy because I just love sailing and treasure hunting and fighting skeletons. I don't really like facing real people because sometimes people can be, well, pirates. So that was another one of my inspirations for this setup. Alrighty, moving on to the habit tracker. As you can probably tell, I found the other textured paper that I wanted to initially use for the sails. One of my goals, I guess, for my 2025 bullet journal, or just for journaling in general, is that I wanted to have more interactable elements because I really loved doing little bits of that here and there for last year's journal. So I decided for the habit tracker that I wanted it to open up and you would see the habit tracker inside, but from the outside it looks like this secret, maybe not like a treasure map, but just kind of like a secret pirate log or something like that. And I went in, of course, and added some more distressing because it didn't have enough for my taste. I've actually done a layout very similar to this for one of my other bullet journal setups. I can't remember if it was either 2021 or 2022, but I did like a forensics detective-esque inspired setup for October because at the time I was really into the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Carrie Maniscalco, and I knew that I wanted to do some kind of theme inspired by that series. So for my mood tracker specifically, I did this exact same layout. So then when you opened it up, you would see an anatomical skeleton, or at least the upper half of the anatomical skeleton, and then on the side it had like all of these clues and pieces of information, and it's one of my favorite mood trackers ever. I do plan on doing a mass bullet journal flip through of going through my 2019 bullet journal all the way through my 2024 one. Although the 2019 flip through will be a little bit scuffed because I don't physically have that journal anymore, unfortunately. So I was just going to scroll to the bottom of my Instagram and flip through whatever photos I ended up posting from 2019. But I figured that'd be a really fun video, especially because I haven't had my YouTube channel for as long as I've been journaling. So it's going to be a lot of fun for me to go through it because I haven't looked at my previous bullet journals in years. And I think it's just going to be fun to show you guys my older bullet journals as well. Going back to this year's bullet journal though, on the left side of the habit tracker, I decided to do a pirate log, which is essentially just a fancy way of saying to-do list. And then on the right side is where I'm going to add another of the ribbon banners that's going to say, of course, habit tracker. And then the inside is going to have the habit tracker itself with all of the calendars. I also made sure to continue the starry constellation sky theme throughout the entire setup, so I'm just going in and adding a few of those to the to-do list. One of the other washi tapes I used a lot throughout this setup was, again, another larger washi tape with a map detail. However, this tape was just the tiniest bit too thin and didn't cover the entire right side edge to edge. So I just did the next best thing and tore off the excess bit of paper, and it ended up giving that same kind of rugged, distressed look that I have been wanting for this setup anyway, so it worked out. Alrighty, so this next detail is definitely a trust the process moment. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted the habit tracker to look like some secret pirate logs or some sort of piratey scroll, I guess, that maybe they found on their travels. I don't know, I kind of had fun creating my own lore for this setup. So to further reinforce that idea of a scroll, I grabbed some twine and kind of shimmied it underneath the paper itself, because again, this is like a flip out page, but I had to paste the back of half the page to the page behind it. That probably sounds really confusing, but there was a little bit of space in between the pages, of course, and I kind of used my nail to push in the twine a bit. The amount of times that this came undone while I was continuing to set up my journal, and keep in mind that anytime I want to fill in my habit tracker, I have to undo this twine. But I don't know, it kind of adds, not only is it a reinforcement of that interactable element, but it's just kind of fun. I feel like I'm logging this very secretive and special information, and it's just like a really fun element, and I enjoyed it even though it's a little bit on the finicky side. After making sure the twine idea was somewhat successful, I'm pasting in these calendars. In some of my previous iterations of my habit trackers, I would use a craft cardstock, which was a little bit more on the darker side, but this time around I wanted to keep the tones relatively light and a little bit more on the neutral side, so I actually used the sticker paper that I use for my shop. After adding in, again, the same constellation details, I'm going in with my Tombow Fudo no Suke pen, another one of my holy grail stationery items, to write out the habits that I want to track for this month. Although, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I have been very behind in keeping up with all of these trackers. I'm pretty sure that most of these will just not be filled in. Another reason why I was very excited to finally get around to doing a pirate theme again was because I've had this little ephemera booklet for quite a number of years at this point, and a few of the pages within this booklet actually have some sort of pirate-esque imagery, so this was literally the perfect time for me to finally use them. So I just tore out a few of my favorites and then used them for the rest of the extra details for the setup. After adding in some sticker and of course the constellation details, the habit tracker is all done. So now I am tying the secrets back up just so I can undo them when I do the flip through of this setup. Alrighty, the next spread I'm going to be working on for this month is my gratitude tracker, a tracker that has found its way into plenty of my monthly setups in the past. Another one of my goals for journaling this year is to do more quote-unquote fun spreads to just diversify my monthly setups a little bit, because I feel like I tend to do kind of the same cookie cutter things. I mean, compared to how I used to do my monthly setups in the past with like weekly spreads and full page calendars, I've wheedled out a lot of spreads that I just never used and kind of tailored it more to my daily life. But I want to also find a way to include even more fun spreads. So if there are any unique or maybe unconventional spreads that you do every month, feel free to comment and let me know, because I would love some new ideas. Probably nothing that has to do with reading though, because I am a pretty inconsistent reader and having a dedicated reading spread hasn't really worked for me in the past, because either I don't end up using it at all or it gets used very little and then I feel guilty about it. Next up, I'm just adding all the days of the month, of course, 1 through 31, but I did not realize this when I finished this spread until much later, that I forgot number 11 for some reason, so there is a number missing, unfortunately. I'm not really sure how that happened. And then I did not like the placement of this star, because that meant that the number 5 was way out in front of all the others and it just didn't look good, so quickly covering that up. That tends to happen because of how much kind of extra detail I do before going in with I guess you could say, the more important part of the spread. I don't know, I kind of just like setting up the details and then going in, because the way I journal is so chaotic anyways. I just figure I'll find a place for everything. But that was an example of it not really working out in my favor. But nonetheless, this is the completed gratitude tracker. Alrighty, we are now going to be moving on to probably my favorite spread of this entire setup, which is my mood tracker. I sketched this out beforehand just for time's sake, and because I needed to try to measure everything out, and the clip was just going to be way too long, and you're gonna see me fill it out here anyways. So I'm not sure if this looks familiar or not. Maybe none of you know what this is, or maybe some of you do. But another one of my kind of quirkier inspirations for this setup is the Flying Dutchman board game from SpongeBob. I'll insert a picture here, so in case you have no idea what I'm talking about. This is what I kind of wanted to recreate. I remember watching this as a kid and wanting this like in real life so bad. I think you can still buy it. I don't exactly know. But it was the episode where Mr. Krabs was actually trying to find the real Flying Dutchman's treasure, and he thought that this game was going to lead him there. And I don't know, this was just one of those core memories that I never really forgot. And I was like, how cool would it be to recreate that for my mood tracker? So that's what I did. I essentially created like a treasure map board game situation inspired by the Flying Dutchman's treasure board game. To do this, I used the same textured paper that I used for the habit tracker, and then traced out 31 different little squares. There are definitely 31 this time because I had to go and number them all, so there is for sure 31. But of course, I needed to incorporate the black pages somehow. So I did the main portion of the board game on this page, and then I had it cross over onto the black paper and wrap back around. It'll make more sense once I actually paste it in. This is just one of the many reasons why I've loved using this journal, and it makes me so happy when I see other people trying this journal out as well and going out of their comfort zone. I know it could be a little bit intimidating because of the black pages, but if anything, it has made me even more creative, or at least I feel that way. After pasting in the main portion of the map, I'm using my Sakura Jelly Roll pen just to finish out the trail. I did kind of make an oopsie though, because I drew a continuous line when it needed to be broken up, but I go in with the black pen to fix that little mistake. And then I just finish off the map by continuing to number the rest of the trail. So up until this point, I was still unsure of how I was going to create some sort of key for this, because the mood tracker is on two different kinds of paper, and I really didn't want to take away from the map itself by adding in a whole bunch of color. So what I decided to do was use the other side of the page to create my own like treasure map key. So after adding washi tape in as somewhat of a page divider, I decided to use stars as my way to track my moods for the month, but the stars will be in reference to quote-unquote the treasure I find throughout the day. So a gold star would mean that I found a lot of treasure, that it was a really good day. A silver star would mean that I found maybe some treasure, but it was just an okay day. It wasn't as amazing as a gold star day. And then a white star would mean that I found no treasure. The square was empty, not really that great of a day as far as moods go. Ultimately, I just felt like this was kind of the best way to track my moods without ruining the map that I took so much time to do. And then, I don't know, I guess in my head I was thinking that maybe this is how pirates track their hauls, like they create some sort of map and then they do, well, they probably don't track it with metallic stars, but I'd like to think that this is somewhat of a way that they can track what treasure they find on their adventures. Also, since I've already been adding a lot of star and constellation details anyways, that also kind of worked out with the setup as a whole. I really love how this mood tracker turned out, and like I said, this is probably my favorite spread from this entire setup. Also, if you knew the reference to SpongeBob before I even said it, you get a gold star from me. Alrighty, with the mood tracker all done, we are going to be moving on to the final spread for this monthly setup, which is, of course, my favorites spread. Anything that I kind of collect throughout the month gets put here, whether that's ephemera or if I just write down any of my favorite moments from this month, although, if we're being completely honest, this month hasn't really been a month of favorites. No, but in all honesty, there were a few good moments earlier in the month. We had some family visiting us from out of town, and we went to the last bookstore in downtown Los Angeles. We had some very pink food at this cafe, and I also picked up a beautiful Japanese vintage camera. I've never even heard of this brand, but the camera is just so beautiful. I think it's from like the late 1960s, early 70s, and I cannot wait to use it. My husband and I we've been waiting to go on our honeymoon because we are going to be doing a joint one with one of our really close friends next year in Japan after they get married at the end of this year. And you can bet I am 100% going to be using this camera the entire trip. Pretty much all throughout high school and even a little bit in college, I was so obsessed with photography. It was one of my favorite hobbies, and I just fell off of it. I got interested in other things, but I definitely think after seeing that camera and having it in my possession, I definitely want to make an effort to reteach myself some things that I might have forgotten, and of course just familiarize myself with film-based cameras, because I have not even interacted with one since I was a kid. So yeah, I'm very excited for the treasure that I managed to find earlier this month. Going back to my favorite spread, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this item in my 2025 bullet journal setup video, but I had gotten these little craft envelopes from the Travelers Company, and my initial idea for these was to use them for my yearly setups, but they ended up being a little bit bigger than I would have liked for the idea I had for them. So I was like, you know what, we're just gonna save them and use them for all of my favorite spreads throughout the months instead, to collect any ephemera, movie tickets, receipts, just anything that I want to save from the month. Speaking of movies, we actually saw 𝒍𝒐𝒄𝒆 earlier in the month as well, and oh my god, that movie is fantastic. If you love gothic horror, just gothic anything, please go watch it. It is fantastic. The cinematography was beautiful. The color grading, Lily Rose Depp was absolutely terrifying, and her acting made me so uncomfortable, and that's how you know she did a great job, at least in my personal opinion. This gave Crimson Peak vibes, Guillermo del Toro. It was just quite literally a movie made for the dark romance, gothic romance girlies out there, so please go watch it. It is definitely a favorite of the month, if not a favorite of the entire year. After adding in some final extra details and of course some more constellations, the favorites spread for this month is all done. Alrighty, friends and fellow adventurers, it is time for the final flip through of my January setup inspired by, of course, all things pirate. I really hope you enjoyed. Once again, a huge thank you to you all for your patience. I know this is going up way later than I would have, of course, liked. Such is life, and sometimes things happen that are definitely not in our control, so the only thing we can do is just try to make the best of the situation we're in. I would just like to quickly take this time to thank all of the amazing first responders and the incredible firefighters who have been putting their lives on the line over the past week to get these fires under control. You guys are absolute heroes. I will make sure to leave a few important links in my description in case you're wondering how to donate or support in any way. I know that for many of us this has been a very rough start to the new year, but by no means do I think that this is in any way a bad omen for the rest of the year. We just need to keep moving forward and support each other as much as humanly possible. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!